Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he checked the cargo manifest one more time. His ship, the Lucky Strike, was hauling mining equipment to the outer colonies near Jupiter. It was boring work, but it paid well. Jake had been running cargo for 15 years, and he liked the quiet life among the stars. The ship's alarm suddenly started beeping. Jake frowned and walked to the control panel. His sensors were picking up something big. 12 ships had just appeared out of nowhere near Jupiter. Jake had never seen ships like these before. They were huge and shaped like crescents, with strange blue lights running along their sides. Jake pressed the emergency beacon button. Every cargo pilot knew to do this when they saw unknown ships. The beacon would alert the authorities and let them know there might be trouble. What Jake didn't know was that his simple emergency signal had just activated one of humanity's most secret defense networks. Far away on Europa, Lieutenant Commander Lisa Warren was drinking coffee when her computer started flashing red warnings. The emergency beacon meant only one thing: aliens had entered human space. Lisa was not really running a communications relay like everyone thought. She was in charge of a hidden military base that had been disguising itself for decades. Lisa pressed several buttons and spoke into her microphone. "All stations, we have contact. Repeat, we have first contact with unknown alien vessels." On the alien ships, Commander Velthar was pleased with what he saw. The human star system looked primitive, just like their intelligence reports said. The humans had only learned to travel faster than light 50 years ago. This would be easy. "Send the standard message," Velthar told his communications officer. "Tell them they are now part of the Zephyrian Empire. They have 1 hour to surrender." The message reached Jake's ship a few minutes later. Jake listened to the alien voice speaking in perfect English. The aliens demanded immediate surrender and said resistance was useless. Jake scratched his head and pressed the reply button. "Hello there," Jake said in a friendly voice. "Welcome to our solar system. I'm just a cargo hauler, but I'm curious about your ships. How do those blue lights work? And what kind of weapons do you have?" Commander Velthar was surprised by the humans' response. Most primitive species were terrified when the Zephyrian fleet arrived. This human sounded genuinely interested in their technology. It was almost cute how naive he was. "Human," Velthar replied. "We possess energy weapons that can destroy your primitive cities. Our ships carry shields that your weapons cannot penetrate. Submit now and your death will be quick." "Wow, energy weapons," Jake said, sounding impressed. "How many ships in your fleet carry those? And how powerful are they exactly? I'm really interested in learning about alien technology." What Velthar didn't know was that every word he said was being recorded and analyzed by hidden human computers. Jake's innocent questions were actually intelligence gathering. Every answer the aliens gave was immediately sent to secret military bases throughout the solar system. On Europa, Lisa Warren smiled as she read the intelligence reports coming in. The aliens were telling them everything about their weapons, their ship designs, and their tactics. They thought they were intimidating a primitive cargo pilot, but they were actually briefing the human military. More human ships began approaching the alien fleet. To Velthar, they looked like simple patrol boats and civilian vessels coming to investigate the strange arrivals. The ships seemed poorly armed and moved slowly. Velthar was amused by humanity's apparent weakness. "Look at them," he told his officers. "They send their weakest ships to meet us. These humans have no idea what real military power looks like." One of the approaching ships was commanded by Captain Alex Turner. His vessel looked like a basic patrol craft with simple weapons and old-style engines. The aliens scanned it and dismissed it as harmless. They had no idea they were looking at humanity's newest stealth destroyer, hidden behind advanced holographic technology. Alex listened to the alien communications and shook his head. "They have no idea what they just walked into," he muttered to his crew. "Maintain the disguise. Let them think we're harmless." On his mining platform near Mars, Colonel Rick Hayes was preparing his weapon systems. To alien sensors, his platform looked like a simple industrial facility for processing asteroids. In reality, it was a heavily armed fortress that could destroy an entire planet if needed. Rick had been waiting 30 years for aliens to finally show up, and he was ready. Jake continued his friendly conversation with the alien commander. "So your empire has conquered many planets?" he asked. "What happened to the species that lived there? Did they fight back or did they surrender peacefully?" Velthar was happy to boast about Zephyrian military victories. He told Jake about dozens of worlds they had conquered, how they had crushed primitive defenses and what they did to species that resisted. He thought he was terrifying the human, but he was actually providing detailed intelligence about Zephyrian military tactics and capabilities. Every word was being recorded and analyzed by Admiral Kate Sullivan at a secret base in the asteroid belt. Kate had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. The human military had been disguising their true capabilities for 50 years, waiting for the right time to reveal themselves. "Interesting," Jake said after listening to more alien boasts. "So you always win because your enemies underestimate you at first, and then it's too late for them to fight back effectively?" "Exactly," Velthar replied proudly. "Primitive species never understand superior technology until it destroys them." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense. I suppose the trick would be to make sure you really understand who you're dealing with before you make your move." Velthar laughed. "Wisdom from a cargo hauler. Perhaps your species has some intelligence after all. Too bad it will not save you." As more human ships gathered around the alien fleet, Velthar grew impatient. The humans were taking too long to show proper fear. Perhaps they needed a demonstration of Zephyrian power. He decided to destroy one of their installations to show them what resistance would cost. Velthar chose a target that looked perfect, an unmanned mining platform that appeared completely defenseless. He would vaporize it in front of the other humans to show them the futility of resistance. "Target that mining platform," he ordered his weapons officer. "Fire when ready." Jake heard the alien transmission and winced. They had just made a very bad choice. That platform was commanded by Colonel Rick Hayes, and Rick had been hoping someone would be stupid enough to shoot first. The Zephyrian ship powered up its main weapon and prepared to fire. Velthar smiled, anticipating the fear he would see in the humans when they witnessed superior firepower. He had no idea that he was about to learn why entering human space without permission was always a one-way trip. Commander Velthar was pleased with how easily the humans had accepted his invitation to board their simple cargo ship. This was going exactly as he expected. Primitive species always tried to negotiate when they realized they were outmatched. The human called Jake Morrison seemed friendly enough, even eager to learn about Zephyrian culture and technology. "Welcome aboard the Lucky Strike," Jake said with a big smile as Velthar and two of his officers stepped into the cargo bay. "I know it's not much to look at, but it's home. Can I offer you anything? Water? Coffee? I'm afraid that's about all I have." Velthar looked around the cargo bay with barely hidden disgust. The human ship was exactly what he expected from a primitive species. Cramped, poorly designed, and filled with basic equipment that looked decades behind Zephyrian technology. "This would be easy. We require nothing from your species," Velthar said coldly. "We are here to discuss the terms of your surrender. Your system will become part of the Zephyrian Empire. Resistance will only bring suffering." Jake nodded seriously like he was considering this important news. "I see, that's quite a big decision. I'm just a cargo hauler, so I don't know much about politics. But I'm really curious about your empire. How many star systems do you control? What kind of technology do you use to manage such a large territory?" What Velthar didn't know was that Jake's cargo ship was not what it appeared to be. Hidden behind false walls and under fake floor panels was some of the most advanced scanning equipment in human space. While Jake asked innocent questions, his ship's computers were performing detailed scans of the alien visitors. Their biology, their equipment, their technology, even the molecular structure of their weapons. The scanning data was being transmitted in real time to Admiral Kate Sullivan at the secret command center in the asteroid belt. Kate watched the analysis results with growing satisfaction. Human scientists were learning more about alien biology and technology in this one conversation than they had hoped to discover in years of research. "Your species seems young," Velthar said, gesturing dismissively at the cargo bay. "How long have you been traveling between the stars?" "Oh, about 50 years now," Jake replied cheerfully. "We're still pretty new at this space travel thing. That's why I'm so interested in learning from more advanced species like yours. Your ships are amazing. How do you generate so much power? And those weapon systems look incredibly sophisticated." Velthar smiled coldly. He enjoyed showing off Zephyrian superiority to primitive species. "Our power systems use controlled antimatter reactions. Our weapons can focus energy beams that will cut through your strongest metals like they were paper. A single shot from our main guns could destroy your largest cities." Jake whistled in apparent amazement. Antimatter reactions? That's incredible. How do you contain the antimatter safely? And how do you focus the energy beam so precisely? The engineering must be really complex. Every technical detail Velthar provided was being recorded and analyzed by human military scientists. They were building a complete picture of Zephyrian technology, looking for weaknesses and vulnerabilities. The aliens thought they were intimidating a primitive cargo hauler, but they were actually providing classified military intelligence to their enemies. While Jake kept the aliens busy with his questions, the real human response was beginning throughout the solar system. On Europa, Lisa Warren was coordinating with defense installations that had been hidden for decades. What looked like simple research stations and communication relays were actually military fortresses armed with weapons that could crack. Planet's Captain Nina Rodriguez was stationed on Titan at what appeared to be a facility for studying ice samples. In reality, Nina commanded enough firepower to sterilize a continent. She was quietly bringing her weapons online while maintaining the facility's innocent appearance on alien sensors. "Tell me about the other species in your empire," Jake said, refilling Velthar's water cup. "Do they all surrender peacefully? Or do some of them try to fight back?" Velthar laughed harshly. "Some are foolish enough to resist at first. There was a species called the Deltarians who thought their planetary shields could protect them. We demonstrated the error of their thinking by turning their largest moon into an asteroid field. After that, they became much more cooperative." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "I can understand why that would be convincing. How many ships did you need for that operation? And what kind of special equipment do you use for breaking planetary defenses?" The alien commander was happy to describe Zephyrian military tactics in detail. He explained how they positioned their fleets, what weapons they used against different types of defenses, and how they coordinated attacks on multiple targets. Every word was being transmitted to human military planners who were already developing countermeasures. On Mars, Colonel Rick Hayes listened to the intelligence briefing while his crew prepared their hidden weapons. Rick's mining platform looked completely harmless to the aliens, but it was actually one of the most heavily armed installations in human space. He had been waiting for this moment for 30 years. "The aliens are following standard doctrine," Rick told his team. "They'll want to make an example of something to scare the rest of us into surrendering. My guess is they'll target what looks like our weakest installation." His crew smiled grimly. Rick's platform was designed to look weak and defenseless while being anything but. If the aliens chose to attack it, they were in for a very unpleasant surprise. Back on the Lucky Strike, Jake was learning about Zephyrian culture and history. Velthar described their warrior traditions, their military hierarchy, and their philosophy of conquest. He seemed to enjoy explaining how superior his species was to the primitive humans. "Your empire sounds very impressive," Jake said sincerely. "I can see why so many species choose to join peacefully rather than fight. But I'm curious, has any species ever surprised you? Ever turned out to be more dangerous than you expected?" Velthar frowned at the question. "Occasionally a species has better defenses than our initial surveys indicated. But superior technology always wins in the end. We have never encountered a species that could match Zephyrian military power." Jake nodded slowly. "That makes sense. I suppose the trick is making sure your surveys are accurate. It would be terrible to underestimate an enemy and walk into a trap." "Impossible," Velthar said confidently. "Our intelligence gathering is the finest in the galaxy. We study species for years before making contact. We know exactly what humans are capable of." Jake smiled and took a sip of his coffee. "I'm sure you do. You seem very thorough." What Velthar didn't know was that human ships had been shadowing Zephyrian vessels for months, studying their technology and tactics while remaining completely undetected. The aliens thought they knew everything about human capabilities, but they had only seen what humanity wanted them to see. Captain Alex Turner, still disguised in his fake patrol ship, was monitoring the conversation between Jake and the aliens. Alex's vessel looked like an outdated piece of junk to alien sensors, but it was actually humanity's most advanced stealth destroyer. The holographic camouflage was so perfect that the aliens couldn't even detect his real ship's presence. "They're getting impatient," Alex reported to Admiral Sullivan. "How much longer do we need to keep this up?" "Jake's doing great work," Sullivan replied. "We're getting intelligence on their entire military structure. Keep the disguise going until they make their move." Velthar was growing tired of the humans' endless questions. It was time to show these primitives what happened to species that wasted Zephyrian time. He stood up and straightened his uniform. Enough talking, Velthar announced. You will transmit our demands to your government immediately. Surrender unconditionally, or we will demonstrate why resistance is futile. Jake looked concerned. What kind of demonstration? Velthar smiled coldly. We will destroy one of your installations. Something visible enough that your entire system will see what happens to those who defy the Zephyrian Empire. Jake nodded slowly. And if we surrender after that? Then your deaths will be quick, Velthar replied. If you continue to resist, your suffering will be legendary. Jake sighed and set down his coffee cup. Well, I suppose that's fair warning. I hope you choose your target carefully, Commander. Sometimes things aren't quite what they appear to be. The Zephyrian energy beam hit Colonel Rick Hayes' mining platform, exactly where Commander Velthar had aimed it. The alien weapons officer smiled with satisfaction, expecting to see the primitive human structure disintegrate into burning wreckage. Instead, something impossible happened. The platform didn't explode. It didn't even seem damaged. Instead, the holographic projectors that had been hiding its true nature for 30 years suddenly shut down. What the aliens had thought was a simple mining operation was revealed to be a massive fortress, bristling with weapons that shouldn't exist on a primitive world. What is that? Velthar's weapons officer whispered in shock. Colonel Rick Hayes looked at his damage report and laughed. They hit our outer armor plating. Didn't even scratch the paint. He opened a communication channel to the alien fleet and spoke in a calm, professional voice. Unknown vessel, you have fired upon a human military installation. This constitutes an act of war. You have 30 seconds to surrender before we return fire. Velthar stared at his view screen in confusion. The massive fortress couldn't be real. His intelligence reports clearly stated that humans were primitive. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. There was no way they could have built something like that. Sir, his sensor operator said nervously, I'm detecting more installations dropping their camouflage. The mining platforms throughout the system are revealing themselves as military fortresses. Captain Nina Rodriguez, commanding what the aliens had thought was a simple research station on Titan, dropped her facility's disguise as well. Suddenly, her ice research laboratory was revealed to be a battle station, with enough firepower to glass a planet. She opened her own communication channel to the alien fleet. This is Captain Rodriguez of the Human Defense Force, she said pleasantly. You appear to be having some technical difficulties with your targeting systems. Would you like us to provide a demonstration of how proper weapons targeting works? All across the solar system, human installations were dropping their disguises. What the Zephyrians had mapped as scattered civilian facilities were being revealed as interconnected fortress worlds, each one armed with technology that defied their understanding of human capabilities. On the lucky strike, Jake Morrison continued his friendly conversation with the increasingly nervous alien delegation. I see your fleet is discovering our little surprise, he said casually. I tried to warn Commander Velthar that things aren't always what they appear to be. This is impossible, Velthar said, his voice rising. Our intelligence reports clearly indicated that humans are primitive. You don't have this kind of technology. Jake smiled and poured himself another cup of coffee. Oh, we don't? That's interesting. What exactly did your intelligence reports tell you about human capabilities? What Velthar didn't know was that his answer was being broadcast throughout the human defense network. The aliens were about to learn that their classified intelligence about humanity was completely wrong, and that humans had been deliberately feeding them false information for decades. Admiral Kate Sullivan's voice suddenly filled every communication channel in the solar system. Her tone was pleasant and conversational, but there was something underneath it that made hardened alien warriors feel cold fear. This is Admiral Sullivan of the Human Defense Network, she announced. We've been monitoring your fleet since you entered our space. You have fired upon human installations without provocation. This will be your only warning to leave our space immediately. Commander Velthar tried to maintain his authority in the face of this impossible situation. I am Commander Velthar of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. Your primitive species will surrender immediately or face the consequences. Admiral Sullivan's laugh was warm and friendly, which somehow made it even more terrifying. Primitive? Commander, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Allow me to clarify the situation for you. Suddenly, Captain Alex Turner's patrol ship began changing before the aliens' eyes. The simple, outdated vessel shimmered and revealed itself to be something that looked like it had been built by a civilization thousands of years more advanced than anything the Zephyrians had ever encountered. "This is Captain Turner aboard the Ghost Protocol," Alex announced. "Commander Velthar, your ships are currently surrounded by more firepower than your entire empire possesses. I suggest you listen very carefully to Admiral Sullivan." Velthar's sensor operator was frantically scanning the human ships, trying to understand what he was seeing. "Sir, these readings can't be correct. These humans appear to have technology that's centuries ahead of anything in our databases." "That's because your databases are wrong," Jake said helpfully from his cargo ship. "You see, we've been hiding our true capabilities for quite some time. The question you should be asking is, why would we do that?" Admiral Sullivan's voice continued over the communication channels. "Commander, your species has a reputation as conquerors. You've built an empire by attacking weaker civilizations, but you made a critical error when you decided to attack humanity." "What error?" Velthar demanded, though his voice was beginning to shake. "You assumed we were weak," Sullivan replied. "You assumed we were primitive. You assumed we were defenseless. Those assumptions are going to cost you everything." Colonel Rick Hayes decided it was time for a practical demonstration. His fortress aimed one of its smaller weapons at a distant asteroid and fired. The asteroid didn't explode in a shower of debris like Zephyrian weapons would have caused. Instead, it simply ceased to exist, erased from reality so completely that even its gravitational signature vanished. "That was our mining equipment," Jake explained to his alien guests, who were staring at their sensors in horror. "We use it for asteroid processing. It also works quite well on enemy ships, as you can imagine." The Zephyrian fleet was beginning to understand that they were not facing a primitive species that had gotten lucky. They were confronting something far worse. A civilization that had been deliberately hiding its true nature while studying its potential enemies. "This is impossible," Velthar repeated, though his conviction was fading. "Our empire has conquered hundreds of worlds. We know how to identify primitive species." "Do you?" Jake asked curiously. "How many of those species were actually primitive and how many were just pretending to be? How would you even know the difference?" Captain Nina Rodriguez added her own thoughts to the conversation. "It's a fascinating question, isn't it? If a species wanted to study its potential enemies without revealing its true capabilities, what would be the best way to do that?" The answer was becoming terrifyingly clear to the Zephyrian commander. The best way would be to appear primitive, while secretly building the most advanced military force in the galaxy, to let your enemies think they understood you while you learned everything about them. "Your empire has been under observation for quite some time," Admiral Sullivan informed the aliens. "We know your military doctrine, your technological capabilities, your strategic weaknesses, and your command structure. We know things about your empire that you probably don't know yourselves." Lieutenant Commander Lisa Warren, still maintaining her communications relay on Europa, decided to prove the Admiral's point. "For example, Commander Velthar, would you like me to play back the conversation you had with your superiors 3 days ago about the primitive human species you were planning to conquer? The one where you complained about having to waste time on such an easy assignment?" Velthar felt the blood drain from his face. That conversation had taken place in his private quarters aboard his flagship, using encrypted Zephyrian communication channels. It should have been impossible for humans to intercept and decode. "How long have you been watching us?" he whispered. Jake smiled and took another sip of his coffee. "Long enough, Commander. Long enough to know that your empire isn't nearly as powerful as you think it is. Long enough to know exactly how to defend ourselves when you inevitably decided to attack us." The terrible truth was sinking in for the Zephyrian fleet. They weren't facing a primitive species that had suddenly revealed advanced technology. They were facing an apex predator that had been patiently studying them for decades, learning their weaknesses, and preparing for this exact moment. Admiral Sullivan's final words to the alien fleet carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Commander Velthar, you have a choice to make. You can leave our space immediately and never return, or you can discover why the title of our defensive doctrine is Enter Human Space Without Permission. Enjoy your one-way trip." The Zephyrian commander stared at his tactical displays, seeing human weapons pointed at his ships from every direction. His mighty fleet was completely surrounded and outgunned by an enemy that knew his every move before he made it. For the first time in his military career, Commander Velthar was beginning to understand what it felt like to be the primitive species facing superior technology. The sensation was absolutely terrifying. Admiral Kethron received the distress signal from Commander Velthar's expedition while reviewing intelligence reports in his private quarters. The message was brief and confusing, something about humans having advanced technology and needing immediate reinforcements. Kethron dismissed it as panic from a commander who had encountered unexpected resistance. "Prepare the battle group," he ordered his staff. "We're going to teach these primitive humans what happens when they dare attack Zephyrian forces." Kethron commanded 40 of the Empire's finest warships, more than enough firepower to reduce a primitive world to ash. The humans had apparently gotten lucky against Velthar's small reconnaissance force. But they would learn the true meaning of fear when they faced a real Zephyrian battle fleet. What Admiral Kethron didn't know was that Captain Danny Brooks had been following his fleet since it left the Zephyrian home system. Danny's stealth ships had been tracking alien military movements for months, gathering intelligence on their capabilities and preparing for exactly this moment. "Admiral Sullivan," Danny reported over secure communications, "the Zephyrian battle group is approaching Sol system. 40 capital ships, standard formation, estimated arrival in 6 hours." Admiral Kate Sullivan smiled as she reviewed the approaching alien fleet from her command center in the Kuiper Belt. The facility was massive, built into a hollowed-out asteroid and hidden from detection for 30 years. To alien sensors, it looked like natural space debris. In reality, it was humanity's true military headquarters. "Excellent," Sullivan said. "Are our defensive preparations complete?" Major Chris Palmer checked his instruments from the hidden control center, buried deep in an asteroid field. "All systems are green, Admiral. The entire debris field is armed and ready. The aliens will fly right through our weapons grid without even knowing it." The debris field that Admiral Kethron's fleet would pass through looked like the natural remains of destroyed asteroids. In reality, every piece of floating rock contained hidden weapons platforms and sensors. Humanity had turned the entire approach to their solar system into a carefully designed killing field. Colonel Sandra Kim, monitoring the situation from her research station on Mars, was reviewing the psychological profiles human intelligence had compiled on Admiral Kethron. "He's confident and experienced," she reported. 40 successful conquests never faced serious resistance. He'll be expecting to intimidate us into surrender just like all the others. That was exactly what Admiral Sullivan was counting on. The human strategy wasn't just about having superior weapons. It was about understanding their enemies so completely that every move could be predicted and countered. When Admiral Kethron's fleet finally arrived in the Sol system, everything looked exactly as he expected. The humans had a few dozen ships positioned defensively near their planets, apparently trying to protect their homeworld. The vessels looked primitive and poorly armed. Kethron was confident this would be over quickly. "Open communications with the human forces," he ordered. "We'll give them one chance to surrender before we demonstrate superior firepower." Admiral Sullivan responded personally to Kethron's demands. Her voice was calm and professional, with just a hint of amusement that made the alien admiral uneasy. "Admiral Kethron, welcome to Sol system. We've been expecting you. I trust your journey went well." Kethron frowned. The human's tone was wrong. Species facing conquest were supposed to be terrified, not making polite conversation about travel arrangements. "Human, you will surrender immediately. Your primitive forces cannot stand against the might of the Zephyrian Empire." "Primitive?" Sullivan laughed gently. "Admiral, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Let me show you something that might interest you." Suddenly, the space around Kethron's fleet came alive with activity. What had appeared to be empty space and floating debris revealed itself to be a massive network of hidden weapons platforms and sensor arrays. The debris field the aliens had passed through was actually humanity's most sophisticated defense grid. Major Chris Palmer's voice came over the communication channels, friendly and helpful. "Admiral Kethron, your fleet is currently inside our primary weapons grid. Every ship in your battle group has been targeted by approximately 50 weapons platforms. We wanted to make sure you felt properly welcomed." Kethron stared at his tactical displays in shock. His sensors were detecting thousands of previously invisible weapons pointing at his fleet from every direction. The humans had somehow hidden an entire military infrastructure in what looked like empty space. "This is impossible," he said. echoing Commander Velthar's earlier words. Our intelligence reports clearly indicated that humans are primitive. You achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. Captain Lisa Warren, still maintaining her cover as a communications operator on Europa, decided to address that misconception. Actually, Admiral, we achieved faster-than-light travel about 150 years ago. We've been exploring the galaxy ever since, including your empire. Would you like me to show you some surveillance footage of your home system? Before Catherine could respond, his view screen filled with images that shouldn't exist. Crystal-clear recordings of Zephyrian military bases, classified shipyards, and secret weapons testing facilities. The humans had somehow been conducting surveillance operations inside Zephyrian space for decades, without being detected. How is this possible? Catherine whispered. Jake Morrison, still playing his role as a friendly cargo hauler, answered the question cheerfully. Well, Admiral, it turns out that when people think you're primitive, they don't look very hard for evidence that you're not. We've had stealth ships watching your empire for generations. Colonel Sandra Kim added her own contribution to the conversation. For example, Admiral, did you know that your secret military base on Kepler 442 has a serious vulnerability in its shield generators? Or that your new prototype weapons have a design flaw that makes them explode when exposed to specific energy frequencies? Catherine felt his confidence crumbling as the humans casually discussed classified Zephyrian military secrets. They weren't just technologically superior. They knew everything about his empire's capabilities and weaknesses. Captain Alex Turner's stealth destroyer suddenly dropped its camouflage, revealing itself as something that looked like it belonged in a museum of impossible technology. Admiral Catherine, this is Captain Turner. I've been shadowing your fleet since you left home. Your ships are impressive, but they're based on technology that we surpassed about 50 years ago. Admiral Sullivan decided it was time to explain the situation clearly. Admiral Catherine, your empire has built its power by conquering primitive species. But humanity isn't primitive. We've just been pretending to be. The question you need to ask yourself is, why would we maintain such an elaborate deception? The answer was becoming terrifyingly clear to the Zephyrian admiral. The only reason to pretend to be weak while building the galaxy's most advanced military force was to study potential enemies and prepare for war. Humanity had been planning for this confrontation for decades. Colonel Rick Hayes decided to provide a practical demonstration of human capabilities. His fortress selected another distant asteroid and fired a different type of weapon. This time, the asteroid didn't disappear. It was precisely carved into a perfect sculpture of the Zephyrian Empire's military emblem. That was just our precision mining equipment, Rick explained casually. We use it for artistic projects when we're bored. It can also perform extremely precise surgery on enemy ships, removing specific components without damaging the rest of the vessel. Captain Nina Rodriguez added her own demonstration by using her facility's sensors to perform detailed medical scans of Admiral Catherine himself, then transmitting the results to his ship. You have slightly elevated blood pressure, Admiral, and what appears to be an old injury to your left shoulder. You should probably see a doctor when you get home. The casual display of technology that could scan individual aliens from across a star system while they were inside their own shielded ships was more terrifying than any weapon demonstration. The humans could reach out and touch their enemies anywhere, anytime, without being detected. Admiral Catherine's communications officer interrupted his growing panic with devastating news. Sir, we're receiving messages from Fleet Command. Human ships have appeared throughout Zephyrian space. They're positioned near every major military installation in the Empire. The full scope of humanity's preparation was finally becoming clear. While the Zephyrians had been planning to conquer what they thought was a primitive species, humanity had been positioning forces to strike at the heart of the alien empire. The hunters had become the hunted, and they hadn't even known the hunt was happening. Admiral Sullivan's final message to the Zephyrian fleet carried the weight of absolute certainty. Admiral Catherine, you have two choices. You can leave our space immediately and never return, or you can discover what happened to all the other species that tried to conquer humanity over the past century. The terrible implication of those words sank in slowly. Other species had tried to attack humanity and had simply vanished. The galaxy was full of extinct civilizations that had made the same mistake the Zephyrians were making right now. Admiral Kate Sullivan's voice filled the void between the human and alien fleets. calm and measured despite the enormous firepower aimed in both directions. Admiral Kethron, you have approximately 30 seconds to make a decision that will determine the fate of your entire empire. Admiral Kethron looked at his tactical displays one more time, hoping to find some advantage he had missed. 40 of the Empire's finest warships surrounded by thousands of human weapons platforms. His fleet was completely outgunned, outmaneuvered, and outmatched by an enemy that knew his every weakness. "What are your terms?" he asked quietly. Commander Velthar, the sole survivor of the original reconnaissance mission, was brought aboard Admiral Sullivan's command ship to witness what happened next. The massive facility hidden in the asteroid belt was beyond anything the Zephyrian military had imagined possible. Humans worked casually with technology that seemed to bend the laws of physics, discussing military strategies with perfect knowledge of dozens of alien civilizations. "Your terms are simple," Sullivan explained as she walked Velthar through the command center. "Your empire withdraws from human space permanently. You sign a non-aggression treaty that includes severe penalties for any future violations. And most importantly, you never speak of what you've discovered. Here to anyone outside your immediate command structure. Vel. There watched human technicians, operating equipment that could apparently monitor communications across half the galaxy in real time. Why the secrecy? If you have this much power, why not reveal it to everyone?" Admiral Sullivan smiled and gestured to a massive holographic display showing the positions of human forces throughout known space. "Because, Commander, the moment we reveal our true capabilities to the galaxy, every other species will unite against us. Right now, they think humanity is a minor player. That gives us strategic advantages we're not ready to give up." The display showed something that made Velthar's blood freeze. Human ships were positioned near every major alien homeworld in the galaxy, hidden and watching. What the various alien empires thought were natural phenomena or unexplored space were actually human surveillance networks that had been operating for decades. Captain Danny Brooks materialized on the command deck, having just returned from his stealth reconnaissance mission. "Admiral, the Zephyrian home fleet is requesting instructions. They don't know what to do about the human ships that have appeared in their space." "How many ships?" Sullivan asked casually. "About 300 that they can detect," Danny replied. "We're keeping the rest hidden for now. No point in completely terrifying them." Velthar realized that humanity had been holding back during their demonstration in Sol system. The weapons and technology they had revealed were apparently just a small sample of their true capabilities. His empire was facing an enemy that could deploy hundreds of advanced warships anywhere in the galaxy without warning. Major Chris Palmer joined the conversation from his hidden control center. "Admiral, we've finished our analysis of Zephyrian military doctrine. Their entire strategy is based on intimidating primitive species into surrender. They have no experience fighting an enemy that's actually superior to them. That explains their poor tactical decisions," Colonel Sandra Kim added from Mars. "They've been winning fights against weaker opponents for so long that they've forgotten how to face real military opposition. Admiral," Kethron's voice came over the communication system, shaking with barely controlled fear. "Admiral Sullivan, I formally request terms for the withdrawal of Zephyrian forces from human space. We acknowledge that our intelligence regarding your capabilities was severely flawed." Sullivan nodded to her communications officer. "Put me through to the entire Zephyrian fleet, audio and visual." When the connection was established, Admiral Sullivan addressed the alien fleet with the same calm professionalism she had maintained throughout the encounter. "Admiral Kethron, your empire made a critical error when it decided to attack humanity. You assumed we were weak because we appeared primitive. That assumption has cost you everything." She gestured to the holographic displays around her command center, showing the positions of human forces throughout Zephyrian space. "Your empire is currently surrounded by more human firepower than you've deployed in your last 10 conquest campaigns combined. We know the location of every Zephyrian military base, every secret weapon, every strategic resource. We've been studying you for longer than your empire has existed." Jake Morrison, still maintaining his friendly cargo hauler persona, added his own thoughts to the conversation. "The funny thing is, Admiral, we really are just cargo haulers and miners and researchers. The difference is that our primitive mining equipment can carve mountains into sculptures, and our simple research stations can scan individual atoms from across a star system." Captain Alex Turner decided to provide one final demonstration of human capabilities. His stealth destroyer targeted a small moon in a distant part of the solar system and fired what appeared to be a mining beam. Instead of destroying the moon, the beam carved a perfect replica of Admiral Kethron's flagship into the lunar surface, complete with detailed hull markings and weapons arrays. "We could have done that to your actual ship, Admiral," Alex explained pleasantly. "We chose not to because we prefer diplomatic solutions to military ones. But make no mistake, the option remains available." Colonel Rick Hayes opened a communication channel from his fortress platform. "Admiral Kethron, you should understand that this encounter was not an accident. We've been tracking Zephyrian expansion for decades, waiting for you to eventually reach human space. Everything you've experienced here was carefully planned and rehearsed. The psychological impact of this revelation was devastating. The Zephyrians realized they hadn't stumbled into an unexpected encounter with a hidden human military. They had walked deliberately into a trap that had been prepared specifically for them years in advance. Admiral Sullivan delivered her final ultimatum with the absolute certainty of someone who held all the advantages. "Admiral Kethron, your empire has a choice to make. You can accept our terms and withdraw peacefully, or you can discover why our defensive doctrine is called Enter Human Space Without Permission. Enjoy your one-way trip." The title suddenly made perfect sense to the terrified Zephyrian commander. Any species that entered human space without permission would indeed enjoy a one-way trip, either a rapid journey home with a message of warning, or a permanent stay in the cold void of space. After a long moment of silence, Admiral Kethron's voice returned to the communication channels, defeated and hollow. "Admiral Sullivan, the Zephyrian Empire formally accepts your terms. We will withdraw all forces from human space immediately and never return." "Excellent," Sullivan replied warmly. "Commander Velthar will return to your fleet with the details of our non-aggression treaty. I trust you'll find the terms reasonable, considering the alternatives." As the Zephyrian fleet began its withdrawal from Sol system, Captain Lisa Warren transmitted one final message to their departing ships. "Have a safe journey home, Admiral. And remember, humanity values its privacy. We trust you'll respect that." The alien fleet limped away, carrying with them the knowledge that the galaxy's balance of power had just shifted dramatically. Humanity was not the primitive newcomer species they had pretended to be. They were apex predators who had been hiding among the stars, watching and learning and preparing for this moment. Admiral Sullivan's final log entry noted that humanity's long masquerade was finally over. The galaxy now knew that Earth's children were not the harmless primitives they appeared to be. They were the ghosts that watched from the void, and they were no longer hiding. The Zephyrian Empire would sign the non-aggression treaty and join a growing list of alien civilizations that had learned the hard way about humanity's true nature. Word would spread quietly among alien governments that there was a new apex predator in space, one that preferred to remain hidden, but was perfectly capable of defending itself when necessary. "Commander," Velthar returned to his ship carrying documents that would reshape interstellar politics for generations. The treaty was fair but firm, establishing humanity as a power that demanded respect while avoiding unnecessary conflict. The aliens had learned that Earth's children were not conquerors seeking to dominate the galaxy. They were defenders who would annihilate anyone stupid enough to threaten them. As the Zephyrian fleet disappeared into hyperspace, Jake Morrison finally dropped his cargo hauler persona completely. Captain Jake Morrison of Human Intelligence Services had spent 15 years perfecting his cover identity, waiting for the day when aliens would finally arrive in human space. "Mission accomplished," he reported to Admiral Sullivan. "The galaxy now knows we're here and they know not to mess with us." I'd say that went exactly according to plan. The plan had indeed worked perfectly. Humanity had revealed just enough of their true capabilities to deter future aggression, while maintaining enough mystery to keep potential enemies guessing. The message was clear: enter human space without permission and enjoy your one-way trip into a nightmare you never imagined possible.